Meanwhile, in exactly 1 month, we'll be at the 2-year anniversary of that historic flooding, which destroyed hundreds of homes and killed 23 people. For some, the cleanup continues to this very day, and people who think they're out of the woods might not be so lucky. Mold could be growing out of sight and spreading, even if people have cleaned every surface of their home. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Delancey investigated the potential for mold growth in the area. Joins us now live with what he found out. Sean?
Yeah, Rick, mold is tricky. There are more than 100,000 different types of it, and if you try and clean it up, its natural defense is to spread as far and as fast as possible. The question is, even if you've scrubbed everything, could it still be living inside of your home? It's hard to believe that it's been nearly 2 years. Lives lost, homes destroyed, everything people owned thrown in heaps and carted off, and that was just the beginning. Weeks, months, years of cleanup followed.
Right about there.
Dean Banks was one of thousands of victims, water covering his yard, flooding his basement, and staying there for days.
When the water dampness got in here, it just...
Volunteers stripped out his ceiling and walls, took out all of the furniture, appliances, and family mementos.
Mud's still in here.
We probably lost about $65,000, $70,000 worth of stuff.
For the next several weeks, Banks says volunteers cleaned, bleached, and sprayed chemicals on every surface to kill mold or prevent it from developing.
Every inch of this place was treated. More than once.
The question is, 2 years later, could mold have survived and be thriving once again in the crooks and crannies of Banks' home? To answer, we called in the professionals. Brett Hodgen runs Kanawha Valley Home Inspections, and he's here to find out what mold is here and where.
What I'm going to do right now is set up an air pump.
First, he takes a sample of the air outside, a baseline to compare against the air inside. Then he walks the perimeter to see where water could enter the home.
This is a good area where that they could do some regrading.
He says the biggest exposure risks are clogged gutters or grading issues, directing water towards the home's foundation. The baseline test is done, so it's time to head inside and do it all over again. As these little filters pull in and trap mold, the dirty work begins, searching for a sample big enough to swab.
Along in this corner.
It doesn't take long, Hodgen finding a sizable growth hiding right where he would expect, little hidden corners where airflow is low.
Right through here is a little bit of a black in color mold.
Black is not what you want to see because it could be Stachybotrys, a strain that can suppress your immune system, cause mental health issues, or damage your organs.
It's one that I'd like to, if I can, I would like to identify.
Now it's time to swab it, seal it, and find out what it is.
That's it. We'll send that off to a lab and they'll tell us what we've got.
The test results come back in a few work days with good news. The air inside has fewer spores than outside, showing the mold growth isn't serious, and the swab is not Stachybotrys. It's a more docile strain called Chaetomium, only known to cause hay fever or asthma issues. Still, it's a good idea for Banks to remove the mold before it becomes an issue, and that's where Bob Rittenauer with Rainbow International Restoration comes in.
If you're doing it yourself, it's a difficult process.
Rittenauer says it's not as easy as wiping and bleaching visible mold. Doing that could actually make the problem worse.
Mold has a defense mechanism. Once something comes to try and kill it, it tries to take off and go away.
That's why he will put plastic around to contain escaping spores, set up a HEPA air scrubber to pull them out of the air, use a HEPA vacuum to remove the main growth, and wear protective respirators and suits to keep the spores out of his lungs and off his clothes.
If you go home and pick up your grandchild, they're going to breathe it right out of your shirt.
To keep it clean and mold-free, he uses a mix of dish soap and an antimicrobial, then hits it again with a pure antimicrobial to stop regrowth. He says a simple bleach mixture
is that sufficient?
Well, not entirely, because especially in a flood, in some instances, the mold can go back on the bleach residue.
I would expect that this drywall should just be removed because once it's in the drywall, it's very difficult to clean.
Keeping mold away is a matter of regular maintenance, keeping 3 factors out of your home. It needs a water source, food source, and a relative humidity above 40%.
If it doesn't have any one of the 3, it won't grow.
Keeping everything dry and using dehumidifiers is extremely effective.
It ran all night, it just needs to be empty.
That way, unless West Virginia gets hit with another 1,000-year flood, you should be relatively mold-free, potentially saving you hundreds in testing and remediation.
Hodgins says mold is everywhere. You're likely breathing it right now, and that's not necessarily dangerous. The key is to keep levels low by removing the sources inside your home. Live in Clendenin, Sean Delancey, Eyewitness News.